Can you imagine living in a country where people rush to the bank the moment they get paid, not to save, but to withdraw each penny before it loses value? Where prices in stores change twice a day, and a carton of milk costs more in the evening than it did in the morning? Where families hoard US dollars under their mattresses because they trust them more than their own national currency? Yes, this is Argentina, a country blessed with fertile farmland, natural resources, FIFA trophies, and even a well-educated population, yet currently on the verge of its fourth bankruptcy in just 25 years. To understand why this keeps happening, we need to look beyond the crises and examine the root causes that keep dragging Argentina back into economic catastrophe. But before I begin, please subscribe to help us create a bigger impact. Reason 1. The deadly debt addiction. This is exactly what we call living beyond its means. At the heart of Argentina's repeated bankruptcies lies a simple but devastating pattern. The country has lived beyond its means for decades, continuously taking on debt it cannot repay. Even the numbers tell the same story. But what's even more surprising is the fact that Argentina has declared bankruptcy 9 times in its 200 years of independence. That's roughly once every 22 years. This is an average pace. But what if I tell you that bankruptcy has accelerated dramatically in the 2000s? In 2001, Argentina defaulted on $132 billion in debt, which was the largest national bankruptcy in history at that time. Thousands of people not only lost their jobs overnight, but also their life savings. And just when people started believing in the country's economy, it happened again in 2014. Then in 2020, President Alberto Fernandez inherited $320 billion in debt. The country was technically bankrupt at that very moment. Now the question is, why does this keep happening? The reality is that Argentina's governments, regardless of political affiliation, have consistently spent more than they collect in taxes. When revenues fall short, they borrow. When borrowing becomes difficult, they print money. This creates a vicious cycle. Printing money causes inflation. Inflation erodes tax revenues in real terms, which forces more borrowing or more printing, which causes more inflation. Interestingly, the IMF helped feed this problem. In 2018, Argentina's economy was already shrinking, but the IMF gave its government a massive $56.3 billion loan. This was not a sound economic decision. It was a political one, simply because the United States wanted to support Argentina's president at the time, Mauricio Macri. Macri was a pro-market, conservative ally, and the US wanted his government to succeed. So the US pressured the IMF to lend the money to prop up their political ally, even though the economic facts didn't support it. But this isn't the only reason for the country's failure. Reason 2. Currency manipulation chaos. The other reason is something that sounds too absurd to be real, yet it existed in Argentina for years. 2 completely different prices for the same currency. So, before President Javier Milei took charge in late 2023, Argentina had created something economically absurd: 2 different exchange rates for the same currency. The official rate stood at about 370 pesos to the dollar, while the real blue rate traded at around 1,000 pesos to the dollar. Think of it like you're a tourist with $100. At the official bank rate, you'd get 37,000 pesos, but if you exchanged on the street at the blue rate, you'd get 100,000 pesos, nearly 3 times more for the same $100. This is not just inefficient, but a symptom of government denial about the peso's true value. And by maintaining an artificially strong official rate, the government pretended the currency was worth more than markets believed. When the new President Milei took power, he faced a terrible dilemma. He could immediately unify these rates, but such a massive devaluation would cause inflation to explode. So he compromised. First, he immediately devalued the peso to 800 per dollar, making it officially worth much less overnight. Then, he put in a system to devalue it by an additional 2% every month, which is called crawling peg. But while the official rate crawled along, the unofficial rate kept falling faster. It was like trying to catch a speeding car by walking. The 2 rates never converged. To put the currency's decline in perspective, in early 2017, the peso was 15 to the dollar. By 2020, it was 67. In 2025, it's over 1,400. That's a currency in terminal decline. So, we can say that currency manipulation is one of the causes that created multiple problems. First, it destroyed all trust in the national currency, forcing citizens to convert their savings into dollars. Second, it made dollar-denominated debt increasingly impossible to pay off. Third, it created parallel economies and corruption as people tried to game the system. So, why can't Argentina ever seem to fix its economy for good? Here's another reason which is even worse. Reason 3. Political instability. Indeed, it all comes down to what we can call the reform reversal cycle, which means the act of undoing or reversing a previous government or policy reform. And in this case, it became the country's deepest political nightmare. Think about it. A politician promises big reforms, implements tough changes, and things actually start to get better for a bit. But then, the political pressure gets too much, and they slam on the brakes. Subsidies are back, spending skyrockets, and the whole cycle of overspending just repeats itself. We just saw this play out with President Milei, right? Initially, he was incredible. He took a massive government deficit and actually turned it into a surplus. Can you believe he brought annual inflation crashing down from 300% to just 30%? Foreign money started pouring back in because investors loved the discipline. But here's the problem. That discipline hurt a lot of people. Spending cuts meant people lost their jobs, social programs were slashed, and the anger just boiled over. And that anger showed up big time. When Milei's party lost a local election in Buenos Aires in September 2025, it was a major shockwave. Why did one little local loss matter so much? Because it was a huge red flag for investors. Bad poll numbers scare the markets. Suddenly, those smart investors who believed in reform are running for the exits. It's almost like Argentina's very valuable democracy makes long-term economic health impossible. There's always a populist politician ready to promise to undo all the painful cuts and bring back the subsidies, winning the next election, but guaranteeing the next national crisis. And that's why this keeps happening. Moving on to another pathetic reason. Reason number 4, structural economic weakness. Now, let's talk about the final problem, the one that really undercuts all the temporary fixes, structural weakness. This is a deeper issue beyond debt and crazy politics. It's simply that Argentina's economy isn't strong enough to support the value of its own currency, even after massive devaluations. Remember Milei's initial success? When he let the peso float freely in April 2025, it initially stabilized at a rate better than expected. But guess what? That stability was a total illusion. Why? Because growth stalled. Exports became so weak that the trade account flipped into a deficit. This means Argentina is now buying way more than it's selling to the world. That translates to less demand for pesos, which immediately puts downward pressure on the currency. The peso, plain and simple, is overvalued compared to Argentina's actual economic muscle. This weakness always leads to one thing: capital flight. When investors lose confidence, they don't walk, they run. They rapidly sell off peso assets, convert to US dollars, and get their money out of Argentina as fast as humanly possible. The numbers tell the shocking story. When the panic selling started, Argentina's central bank had to burn a massive $1 billion in liquid reserves just to meet the initial demand. But the country only had about $20 billion in reserves to begin with. By early October 2025, only about $700 million was left, enough to last maybe a week. Every single time Milei has to burn reserves to defend the currency, it screams one thing to the world: the peso cannot stand on its own. This just causes more selling, which requires more government intervention, ultimately guaranteeing a severe devaluation. It's yet another terrifying doom loop with only one possible ending: bankruptcy. Now, $1 million question is why external support can't fix internal problems. Let's take Trump's bailout, for example, because it perfectly illustrates why Argentina's problems can't be solved from the outside. Here's what happened. On September 22, 2025, U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent announced the U.S. would support Argentina with a $20 billion swap line. Swap lines allow countries to exchange currencies at the current rate, protecting them from currency risk if the peso collapses further. Initially, it worked. The peso strengthened from nearly 1,500 to just over 1,300 by September 26th. Crisis averted, right? Wrong. The peso resumed its decline, back above 1,400 by early October. Why did the bailout fail? The US bailout failed for three main reasons. First, the money came from the US Treasury, which everyone knows is in debt itself, a nearly bankrupt country trying to save another bankrupt country. Not reassuring. Second, and most importantly, the aid was just a band-aid on a compound fracture. It did absolutely nothing to fix Argentina's real, huge problems: the out-of-control spending, the broken economy, and the political fighting. Third, it wasn't even about the economy. It was about the US fighting China for influence in South America, but you can't solve economic problems with political schemes. Now, the clock is ticking for President Milei. With almost no reserves left and an election right around the corner, he faces a nightmare with these three options. Option 1. Try to keep fighting. He can keep burning the last bit of reserves to save the peso, but that will only last a few more days. Option 2. Let it crash. He can let the peso collapse, sending the dollar sky high and making it impossible to pay any of the country's foreign debts, almost guaranteeing a default. Option 3. Trap the money. He can trap everyone's money inside the country, which would instantly destroy all trust and completely undo his reforms. Obviously, it's a terrible choice, and it proves that, until Argentina stops its own bad habits, another total disaster is looming. Another default looks increasingly inevitable. So, what does Argentina's endless cycle of failure really teach us? It's not just a story of one badly run country. It's a harsh lesson about our entire global financial system, one that seems to allow and sometimes even encourage reckless borrowing, politically motivated lending, and making short-term choices that guarantee long-term pain. Until Argentina finally fixes these root causes, the bankruptcy cycle will continue. Why? Because debt matters. Printing money or manipulating the currency cannot solve real problems. It only pushes the catastrophe further down the road. Political stability is crucial for economic health, and bailouts don't fix the core failures. They only postpone the inevitable crash, often making the final disaster even worse. Here is the bitter irony. Argentina is just a mirror reflecting the state of the entire global economy right now. Many countries are walking down this exact same path, just a bit more slowly. If we ignore the painful lessons from Argentina, others will surely face the same devastating fate in the years to come. And remember this: the best time to fix these problems is before the crisis hits. Argentina shows us, in the most painful way possible, exactly what happens when we wait too long. Thanks for watching.